Last week, we were graced with a double feature Nintendo Direct. As always, there were a few surprise games released immediately after the Direct. I decided to pick up Goat Simulator 3, Peglin, and Pizza Tower. So let's talk about them. Of all the games dropped during the Direct, I was most excited about Goat Simulator 3. I skipped the first game since I had read that it was mostly just a physics playground and less of an actual adventure, but Goat Simulator 3 apparently had a bit more structure. I also love goats, so I was pretty hyped about this one. Right off the bat, Goat Simulator 3 makes a great first impression. It opens with a hilarious self-referential homage to the opening of Skyrim. Once you're let loose in the world, it's a good bit of fun just running around and testing the limits of the game world. You're initially given a pretty wide range of moves. You have a Mario-style triple jump, a Tony Hawk-style rail grind, a trick button that allows for flips and spins, and you can also lick anything that isn't nailed down, letting you drag whatever you want, wherever you want. Scattered around the world and as rewards for completing quests are various accessories to spruce up your goat. Most of them are merely cosmetic, but others give you new moves, such as a saddle that lets you strap unwilling humans and animals to you as you take them for a ride, a hang glider that lets you soar across the map, and even a t-shirt gun that lets you swap the t-shirts of various pedestrians for some reason. You never know what mechanic you're gonna find right around the corner, and that ended up being my primary motivating factor for continuing to play Goat Simulator 3. There are a few different types of quests that give you a little bit of structure too. First, there are the really simple ones, like do 2 backflips or hang glide for 30 seconds. Then there are the ones you'll discover around the map as you explore new areas. For example, I wandered into a presidential campaign rally, and a quest prompt popped up that read "Run for President." The task was to, quote, win the election. The quest descriptions are always a little vague, which makes figuring them out a puzzle into themselves. In this instance, the game wanted my goat to lick and drag various people into the voting booth until I had committed enough voter fraud to secure my position of authority. A lot of the humor in the game comes from these quests. The problem is the game has some serious performance issues on Switch. I hope you like pop-in because Goat Simulator 3 has some of the worst pop-in I've ever seen. Walls and floors will fail to load, entire buildings will appear as nothing but scaffolding, and items will float around in midair like they're being held up by balloons. I kept getting stuck in the geometry too, which really hindered any fun I was having. Not only that, but the map has hardly any life in it. NPCs are few and far between, and you'll only really ever see one car on the street at a time. I've seen footage from the PC and Xbox versions of Goat Simulator 3, and they don't seem to have this problem. In the denser city areas, these issues became so bad that I decided to just put the game down entirely and cross my fingers for a patch. I was having a good time with Goat Simulator 3 in the beginning. In the less densely populated areas, it can be a fun and funny destructive playground. But once you venture out of the starting area, the performance issues make this one basically unplayable. So for the moment, I do not recommend Goat Simulator 3. If it does get patched up, I'll pin a comment below, but in the meantime, this is one to avoid. So how about Peglin? When I was 16, my grandfather took me on a trip to Japan. My first night out in Tokyo, I ended up wandering into a pachinko parlor and spent the night learning the game from the locals and ultimately winning over 100,000 yen. When Peggle first came out, I was addicted to it. The point being, I love pachinko. So when I saw the trailer for Peglin, I had to pick it up. Peglin is a pachinko roguelike. You play through various pachinko boards, battling enemies, obtaining upgrades, and trying to survive increasingly insurmountable odds. Boards are made up of a few different peg types, including standard pegs, bomb pegs, pegs that reset the board, and pegs that give you critical hit damage. Each peg you hit increases your attack power. Your arsenal of balls each have different effects too, like a flame ball that sets off bombs in a single hit, or super bouncy balls that ricochet like mad, boosting your attack power even further. At the end of each board, you're given the option to upgrade your balls, heal yourself, or save your cash for the various vendors. You'll also get the choice of where to go next after each board, which lets you decide whether you want to visit a shop or hop into another battle. If you've ever played a roguelike before, the structure of this game will be immediately familiar. And Peglin is a pretty good take on a pachinko roguelike. The upgrades you'll come across are mostly interesting, and when combined with the multiple types of balls, the game does a really good job of changing up your tactics with each run. I found that in order to do well, you really have to commit to a plan early in your run and build your upgrades and ball choices around that plan. Otherwise, you'll have a whole bunch of parts that don't necessarily complement each other. If you're dealt a good hand early on, this is a great system. But if you're dealt some unfortunate early upgrades, you'll start running into trouble pretty quickly. The default ball speed is kind of slow, so while I'm grateful for the option to be able to speed the game up, it does come at the cost of some serious performance issues. Beginning on the second world, the pegs on the board will start moving around, and if you crank up the game speed, everything starts to stutter horribly. It really sucks and makes aiming almost impossible. At the default speed, the game performs fine. But then you'll have to deal with it feeling unbelievably slow, which is an unfortunate trade-off for a game that's so graphically simple. Overall, I liked Peglin, and it can be downright addictive. Despite the slowdown in the more complex levels, I still think Peglin is worth your time if you're a fan of pachinko, Peggle, or are just looking for a unique take on the roguelike genre. I love when indie developers take long dormant IP franchises and make their own modern day versions instead of waiting for the original IP holders to get off their butts and deliver to the fans the sequels that we've been waiting for. For example, Spark the Electric Jester 3 is more or less Sonic Adventure 3, and now we have Pizza Tower, which is more or less Wario Land 5. The Wario Land series has been dormant since the Wii era, and if you've been holding out hope for a new entry, you can rest easy, as developer Tour to Pizza has your back. Pizza Tower is an incredible homage to the Wario Land games. Let's get the most obvious thing out of the way first. Pizza Tower looks absolutely wild. There is personality dripping from every single frame of animation, and Pizza Tower is worth playing for its visuals alone. Peppino runs around like a frantic maniac, starting out all timid before seemingly gaining manic confidence as his speed increases. The various enemies each have buckets of charm too. Thankfully, Pizza Tower isn't just a looker, it's also a ton of fun to play. The goal is to speed through the level, grabbing pizza toppings trapped in cages before coming upon and knocking out a tower pillar. Once you've knocked down the pillar, it's a mad dash back through the stage to reach the exit before the timer runs out. Structurally, Pizza Tower is nearly identical to Wario Land Shake It on the Nintendo Wii. If you've ever played that game, you know what you're getting here. Beyond running out of time as you beeline it for the exit, you can't really die in Pizza Tower. Hitting an enemy has you lose points, but death is never really a concern. There are some really fun power-ups too, like a spicy maraca that lets you set everything on fire. I don't want to spoil the others, but they're all really creative and fun to use. Levels are wildly creative too, one of my personal favorites being a Western themed stage where halfway through I ran into a flying saucer and it suddenly became alien themed. Unfortunately, there was one mechanic that consistently frustrated me throughout my entire playthrough. When you're running at top speeds, you'll often smack face first into a wall, and it will kill your momentum. For a game that encourages speed, consistently hitting walls over and over and over again became annoying after a while, and I felt like it created these weird pauses in the flow of the gameplay. It's not that big of a deal, but it just felt off compared to the polish seen everywhere else. There is so much charm and variety in Pizza Tower, it's really hard not to fall in love with it. I highly recommend checking this one out. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know below what games you were most excited about from the Direct. And don't forget to like and subscribe, that would mean a lot. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.